The auction hall smelled of rust and old metal, the kind of place where broken machines and forgotten treasures were sold for a few credits. The human traveler named Daniel had been wandering the galaxy for years, looking for small jobs and cheap finds. He had no fortune, no grand ship, only curiosity and a sharp mind. That was why he stepped into the dusty alien junk auction on the edge of the starport, hoping he might find something interesting to sell later. The auctioneer, a tall insect-like alien with thin arms, shouted in a language mixed with trade words and clicks. Strange objects passed across the stage. Cracked armor, bent weapons, half-dead droids, and strange tools from forgotten wars. Most items were useless, but Daniel's eyes kept searching. He always believed one man's trash could be another man's chance. Then the auctioneer lifted an old helmet. Its metal surface was scratched and dull, but something about it caught Daniel's attention. It was shaped strangely, unlike human helmets. More ceremonial than protective, faded lines and symbols were etched across its surface. The crowd suddenly grew quiet. Aliens in the hall whispered to each other, their voices low as if afraid. The auctioneer's tone shifted, his words became cautious. He called it the cursed relic, a piece of junk from a dead empire. No one raised their hand. No one dared to buy it. The silence made Daniel curious, he thought to himself. If nobody wants it, maybe it has some hidden value. He raised his hand. The crowd gasped. Some even stepped back as if he had done something dangerous. The auctioneer hesitated, but then, with a nervous shake of his arms, he struck the hammer. Sold, he declared. His voice cracked as if he wanted to be done with it quickly. Daniel paid just a few credits, cheaper than a drink at a space bar. He walked to the stage, picked up the helmet, and felt a strange chill run down his spine. The metal was cold but pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. For a second he thought he heard a whisper, not in his ears but in his mind. It was gone before he could understand. He tucked the helmet under his arm and turned to leave. But every alien eye in the room followed him. Some looked afraid, some angry, others curious. It was as if by touching the helmet, he had broken some unspoken rule. Daniel walked faster, his heart beating with unease. Outside, under the starport lights, the air felt heavy. He studied the helmet again, running his fingers across the faded marks. Suddenly a symbol glowed faintly beneath the dust. It looked like a crest, a royal seal perhaps. He frowned. So this isn't just junk, he whispered to himself. Before he could think more, a group of armored alien guards appeared. Their weapons pointed at him. Behind them, a tall woman with silver skin and glowing blue eyes stepped forward. She wore regal robes, her presence was strong, commanding. The crowd around the market bowed their heads in respect. Daniel realized she was no ordinary person. She must be someone important. The woman's eyes locked on the helmet in his hands. Her expression shifted from surprise to disbelief. She walked closer, studying him as though she could see into his very soul. Then, to his shock, she dropped to one knee. Her guards followed, lowering their heads. The market fell silent. Whispers spread quickly. The lost one has returned, some said. Others muttered, the prophecy. Daniel stood frozen. Completely confused, he had only bought a piece of junk. Now an alien princess was kneeling before him, treating him like a ruler. The woman spoke softly but clearly. The helmet has chosen you, she said. By ancient law, you are the rightful heir to the throne of my world. Daniel almost laughed. He was just a human wanderer with barely enough credits for food. Now strangers believed he was their leader. As he held the helmet tighter, the strange pulse inside it grew stronger. The whispers returned, echoing in his mind. Not frightening, but powerful. He didn't understand the words, yet he felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. The princess rose to her feet and extended her hand. Come with me, she said. Your journey has only begun. Daniel hesitated. His instincts told him this was dangerous, but another part of him felt drawn to her, drawn to the power of the helmet, drawn to a path he could not see yet. The crowd parted as the guards surrounded him. Daniel took one last look at the auction hall, where rusty junk and forgotten machines lay waiting for other buyers. He had come to find a cheap item to sell instead. He had bought something that changed everything. With the helmet glowing faintly in his hands and the princess by his side, Daniel stepped forward into a future filled with mystery, danger and power. He didn't know it yet. But that single foolish purchase at a junk auction had made him more than a traveler. It had made him the center of a story that would shake a planet and change his life forever. Daniel sat inside the alien transport. the helmet resting on his lap. His fingers brushed the cold surface again and again, as if he was trying to convince himself it was real. The alien princess sat across from him, her glowing blue eyes never leaving his face. She had not told him her name yet, only that he must come with her. Guards surrounded them, silent and watchful. The air inside the craft was heavy, filled with tension and expectation. As the transport moved through the city, Daniel peered out of the window. The alien world stretched before him. Towers of crystal and metal rising toward the sky, streets filled with strange vehicles, people stopping in their tracks as they noticed the royal carriage pass. Some bowed, others shouted words Daniel could not understand. He realized that everyone was staring at him. Not the princess, but him, the human with the helmet. The transport stopped at a towering palace built of dark stone. The walls were covered with glowing patterns, and banners of silver and blue waved in the wind. The guards led Daniel inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, he felt a strange pull. The helmet grew warmer. Faint light running along its cracks, it was as if the palace itself recognized the object. Inside a great hall, more nobles and soldiers gathered. Their eyes widened when they saw him. A murmur spread across the room like fire. The princess lifted her hand and everyone went silent. She stepped forward and spoke in the common trade language so Daniel could understand. "This man has awakened the forgotten symbol," she said. "The relic of our true rulers," Daniel frowned. "Symbol?" he asked, confused. The princess gestured at the helmet. Her voice dropped, serious and heavy. "Long ago, when our dynasty ruled the stars, the royal heir wore this helmet during coronation. It was not just armor, it carried a seal. A code burned into the metal. No impostor could wear it. It was said that when the true one came, the helmet would awaken again." Daniel looked at the dull metal. It didn't feel like a crown, just a piece of junk he had bought for a few credits. But the faint glow beneath the scratches told another story. "So you're saying, this means I'm some kind of king?" he asked carefully. The hall erupted in whispers. Some shouted in agreement, others in anger. A tall noble stepped forward, his voice full of fury. "He is an outsider, a human. He cannot rule us." The princess raised her hand again. Silencing the hall, her eyes locked on Daniel's. "The helmet does not lie," she said firmly. "It chose you. No matter your race, no matter your origin. You are now bound to our destiny." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to laugh, to refuse, to say he was just a traveler with no business in royal games. But deep inside, the strange pulse of the helmet grew stronger. He could feel something ancient in it. Something alive. The whisper returned, clearer this time. Though still impossible to fully understand, it made him shiver. That night, he was taken to a private chamber. The princess joined him. She finally told him her name, Liara, daughter of the last true queen. She explained how their world had fallen into chaos, ruled by greedy generals and corrupt nobles. The people had lost hope, waiting for the prophecy to be fulfilled, waiting for the helmet to awaken. Liara's eyes softened as she looked at him. "You do not believe yet," she said gently, "but the people already do. Tomorrow they will demand you stand before them. You must decide, will you take the path given to you, or throw it away?" Daniel leaned back, staring at the helmet. He remembered the laughter of the auctioneer, calling it cursed junk. He remembered buying it without thought, just for curiosity. And now it had become the center of a planet's destiny. He whispered to himself, "Why me?" The helmet pulsed again, as if answering. Liara stood and walked closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Maybe not why you, Daniel, maybe why now." She placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch steady and warm. "Rest. Tomorrow the world will know your face." Daniel lay awake long after she left. His heart raced, his mind fought with doubt. But the strange pull inside the helmet would not let him go. Whatever this path was, he knew it was no accident. He had not just bought a piece of junk. He had bought a symbol, a key to power, and perhaps a key to something far greater. The night stretched on, filled with quiet whispers from the helmet, words he could not yet understand, but words that promised change. Outside the palace, thousands of aliens gathered, waiting for the dawn, waiting to see the man who carried the forgotten symbol, waiting to see if prophecy had truly returned. Daniel awoke to the sound of drums echoing through the palace walls. The heavy rhythm rolled across the city, calling everyone to gather. He sat up on the soft bed, but his eyes went straight to the helmet resting on the table. It seemed brighter now, glowing faintly even in the morning light. He reached for it slowly, his hand trembling. The moment his fingers touched the metal, he felt that same strange pulse rush through his chest, as if the helmet was alive and waiting for him. The door opened and Princess Liara entered, dressed in ceremonial armor. Her silver skin shimmered under the soft glow of the room. Her voice was calm but firm. "Today the people must see you, but before they can believe fully, you must prove you are worthy," Daniel frowned. "Prove? I never asked for this." Liara's blue eyes fixed on him. Sharp and steady. "Prophecy does not ask. It demands." They led him into a courtyard where thousands had gathered. Nobles stood on balconies, soldiers lined the walls, and ordinary people filled the square. Their faces were a mix of fear, doubt, and hope. In the center stood 3 great pillars of stone. Each pillar had a different test prepared. Liara raised her voice so all could hear. "The helmet has chosen, but the man must prove his spirit." The first test was strength. A massive alien warrior twice Daniel's size stepped forward, his body covered in armor. He lifted a giant hammer and slammed it into the ground. The crowd roared. Daniel had no weapons, only his human body. The warrior charged. Expecting to crush him in one blow, Daniel thought quickly. At the last second, he dodged to the side, grabbed a loose chain lying nearby, and looped it around the warrior's legs. The alien stumbled, fell forward, and slammed his face into the dirt. The crowd gasped. Daniel stood over him. Not with muscle, but with quick thinking. The second test was wisdom. A council elder stepped forward holding a glowing cube. Symbols floated in the air above it. Forming a puzzle of shifting lights, the elder said, "Solve it, or be cast aside." Daniel stared at the shapes. They twisted and changed. Confusing and strange, but he noticed patterns. He remembered games back on Earth. Logic puzzles he had played on old tablets piece by piece. He arranged the glowing symbols until they locked into place. The cube flared with light. The elder's jaw dropped and the crowd cheered. The third test was courage. A gate opened, and from it slithered a beast with scaled skin and burning red eyes. Chains rattled around its neck as it snarled. The crowd stepped back in fear. Daniel's heart pounded. He had no weapon, only the helmet. He lifted it in his hands. Unsure what to do, the beast lunged, jaws wide. In that instant, Daniel slipped the helmet over his head. The world changed. His vision filled with streams of strange symbols. His ears rang with whispers. The beast froze mid-leap. Daniel didn't understand how, but he raised his hand, and the creature stopped as if held by invisible force. Gasps echoed through the square. The whispers grew louder in his mind. Guiding him, he stepped forward, touched the beast gently on the snout, and it lowered its head, submitting to him. The helmet's glow spread across the courtyard, washing the walls in silver light. The people fell to their knees, shouting words of praise. Soldiers slammed their weapons against the ground in salute. Liara's eyes softened, pride shining within them. She walked to Daniel's side, lifted his arm high, and declared, "The tests are complete. The helmet has chosen. And now the world has seen. This man is no outsider. He is the heir of destiny." Daniel stood in shock, his chest heaving, his mind spinning. He had not planned any of this. He was just a wanderer who had bought a strange relic, yet now an entire planet bowed before him. Liara leaned closer and whispered so only he could hear. "You passed not because of strength or magic, but because you are human, and that is what makes you different. That is why the helmet awoke for you." That night, as the city celebrated, Daniel sat alone with the helmet by his side. The whispers inside it had grown clearer. He still could not understand every word, but he felt less fear now. It was not just a relic. It was a guide, and deep inside, Daniel knew his life could never return to what it was. The helmet had chosen him, the people had seen him, and the princess now stood with him. His journey was no longer about survival. It was about destiny. The celebration in the city did not last long. Fireworks lit the skies, music filled the streets, and the people cheered Daniel's name. But in the dark corners of the palace, shadows moved. Not everyone was happy to see a human stand with the helmet. Not everyone was ready to bow to prophecy. Daniel sat in his new chamber, the helmet resting on a stand beside him. The whispers inside it had grown louder, sometimes like voices arguing, sometimes like warnings. He tried to sleep, but unease pressed against his chest. He had passed the tests, yes, but he could feel eyes watching him even here in the heart of the palace. Late at night, Liara entered his chamber quietly. Her face was troubled. She leaned close and spoke in a low voice. The nobles are restless, they fear you will change their power. Some already speak of rebellion. Daniel rubbed his face. I didn't ask for this, I don't want their throne. Liara shook her head, her silver hair shimmering. It no longer matters what you want. The helmet has claimed you. That means you are now a threat to those who have stolen power. Before Daniel could answer, a scream rang out in the hall. Guards rushed in. Blood staining their armor, one of them fell at his feet. A knife buried deep in his chest, more shouts echoed through the palace. Daniel grabbed the helmet instinctively. The moment he touched it, the whispers became sharp and clear, urging him to move, urging him to fight. The doors burst open, and masked assassins stormed into the room. Their blades gleamed under the torchlight. Daniel slipped the helmet over his head and the world changed again. His vision sharpened, his heartbeat steadied. He saw the assassins' moves before they struck. As if the helmet was guiding him, he ducked under the first swing, grabbed a broken spear from the wall and rammed it into the attacker's chest. The man fell gasping, another assassin leapt at him. But Daniel sidestepped and kicked the man into the stand where the helmet had rested. The stand shattered, wood flying across the floor. Liara fought beside him, moving with grace. Her blade cut down two attackers in swift arcs of silver light. They will not stop, she shouted. You must survive. No matter what, the last assassin lunged, his knife raised high. Daniel felt the whispers scream in his mind. He raised his hand, and a sudden burst of invisible force hurled the attacker across the room. Smashing him into the wall, the man crumpled, unmoving. Silence fell over the chamber except for Daniel's heavy breathing. Liara's eyes widened. She had seen the helmet's true power. Not just a glow, not just whispers, but force itself bending to Daniel's will. She sheathed her sword slowly and looked at him. Now they will fear you more than ever. The next day, the nobles gathered in the council chamber. Their faces were masks of anger and doubt. One of them, a tall alien with horns like black iron, slammed his fist on the table. This human cannot rule. He brings chaos, he brings blood, we should cut him down before more die. Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. Liara stood and silenced them with a single glance. Her voice was sharp as steel. The assassins were sent by your kind. The proof is on their bodies, branded with noble sigils. You do not fear him because he is weak. You fear him because he is strong. And that is why he will rule. Daniel remained silent, standing at the edge of the chamber. He could feel their hatred like heat pressing against his skin. He was no politician, no king, but the helmet hummed softly, reminding him he was not alone. Later, as the sun set, Daniel walked with Liara to the palace balcony. Below them, the city still sang his name, but in the distance smoke rose from hidden camps. He knew what it meant. They're gathering an army, he said quietly. Liara nodded, her voice steady but grim. Yes. The nobles will not accept you, they will strike, and when they do, it will not be whispers in the dark, it will be war. Daniel gripped the balcony rail. His hands shook. I'm not a soldier, Liara. I'm just a man who bought junk at an auction. She turned to him, her eyes glowing with fire. No, you are more. You are human, you are clever, you are stubborn, and now you have the helmet. With it you can be what this world needs. He looked at her, then at the helmet glowing faintly in the dark. The path ahead was no longer a question. The rebels were coming and he would have to face them. The junk he bought had become his crown, and now it demanded he fight to keep it. Far across the city, in secret halls lit by fire, the nobles raised their banners. Their generals swore oaths of war and blades were sharpened. The first sparks of rebellion had been lit, and soon they would burn across the planet. The night sky over the alien capital glowed red with fire. The rebellion had begun from the hills beyond the city. Horns blared and drums thundered. Rebel soldiers marched in the thousands, banners of the noble houses fluttering above their heads. Inside the palace, Daniel stood armored not in gold or jewels, but in scraps of human practicality mixed with alien steel. The helmet sat on his head, its faint glow spreading across his vision. The great hall was filled with soldiers loyal to the crown, their faces grim, weapons gripped tight. Princess Liara walked beside Daniel, her armor gleaming. She spoke loudly so all could hear. Tonight they come to break us, tonight they come to kill prophecy, but we will show them that destiny cannot be broken. The soldiers roared back, their voices shaking the very walls. Daniel felt his stomach twist. He had never commanded an army before. He had never fought a battle beyond bar fights and petty skirmishes. Yet here he was, standing as a symbol. He whispered under his breath, "What if I fail?" The helmet pulsed in answer, the whispers filling his head. Not in words, but in certainty. He straightened his back. The time for doubt was gone. The rebels struck at dawn. Catapults hurled burning stones, walls shook, and the gates groaned under pressure. Daniel stood on the battlements as soldiers looked to him for orders. His human mind raced. He remembered old history books, ancient strategies of Earth wars, tricks that seemed simple but had saved empires. He turned to Liara. "Pull back the center, leave it open. Make them think we are weak." She blinked, confused for a moment. But then her lips curved into a sharp smile. A trap. The gates finally burst. Rebels poured in, shouting victory too soon. They surged into the courtyard where Daniel had left only a thin line of soldiers. The rebels charged harder, but then horns blew, and from both sides, hidden archers rained arrows. The rebels were trapped in a deadly crossfire. Daniel shouted, "Now!" Loyal soldiers charged from the flanks, cutting through the rebels like a blade through cloth. The crowd roared. The rebels screamed in panic. Daniel's plan had worked. He felt the helmet thrum with approval. The whispers swirled louder, guiding his steps as he fought. Every swing of his borrowed blade landed true. Every dodge came just in time. It was as if the helmet itself wanted him to live. But the battle was far from over. A massive warlord in black armor stormed through the chaos. His eyes burned with hatred. His voice boomed across the courtyard. "A human will never rule us." He swung a weapon the size of a tree trunk, cutting down loyal soldiers in his path. Daniel felt fear grip him. But the helmet pulsed, urging him forward. Liara stepped in front of Daniel, blocking the warlord's path. Her sword clashed against his massive weapon. Sparks flew. The ground shook under the force. She fought with fury, but the warlord was stronger. His blade knocked her back. Daniel caught her before she fell. Her eyes met his, breathless but fierce. "This is your fight." Daniel swallowed hard and stepped forward. The warlord laughed, raising his weapon high. Daniel placed both hands on the helmet, and suddenly the whispers became one clear voice. It was not in human language, not an alien tongue, but Daniel understood. "Stand and command." He raised his hand. An energy burst from the helmet, invisible yet unstoppable. The warlord's weapon froze mid-swing, his body locked in place. His eyes widened in shock as he struggled against the unseen force. Daniel shouted with all his strength, "This is not your throne!" and hurled the warlord across the courtyard. The giant smashed against the walls, his armor shattering. Silence fell for a breath. Then the loyal soldiers erupted in cheers. The rebels faltered, their leader broken, their lines collapsing. Daniel seized the moment. His voice carried across the battlefield. "Lay down your arms or share his fate." The helmet's glow spread wide, silver light washing over the battlefield. Many rebels dropped their weapons, others fled into the hills by midday. The rebellion was broken when the smoke cleared. Daniel stood in the ruined courtyard. Exhausted, his body ached, his hands trembled. But the helmet still pulsed steady and strong. Liara stood beside him, her eyes shining with pride and something deeper. "You fought not as a stranger," she whispered, "but as a ruler." The people flooded into the streets. Chanting his name, for them the prophecy was no longer a whisper. It was truth. A human had worn the helmet, commanded its power, and saved their world. Daniel looked out over them, his chest heavy. He had not wanted this crown, but now it rested firmly on his head, and he could not turn away. That night fires lit the city in celebration, but Daniel knew peace would not come so easily. The nobles who had fled would gather again. Shadows still waited in the dark, yet for now the throne was his, and the people stood behind him. The helmet hummed softly, as if pleased, and for the first time Daniel allowed himself to believe it. Maybe he truly was chosen. The city had not slept since the battle. Streets still glowed with lanterns, drums still echoed from every corner, and the people shouted Daniel's name as though he had been born among them. The rebellion was crushed, the warlord defeated, and the nobles who plotted had fled into the shadows. Yet for Daniel, the true weight of the night was only beginning. He walked through the palace hall, every step watched by loyal guards and kneeling citizens. The helmet rested under his arm, faintly glowing even when hidden from sight. Whispers followed him like a second shadow, not just from the relic but from the people. Some whispered in awe, others in fear, all waiting for what would come next. At the center of the great palace stood the throne chamber. Its ceiling rose higher than any cathedral Daniel had ever seen. Silver banners fell from the rafters, lit by blue fire that floated in midair. The massive throne of obsidian stone sat at the far end. Untouched for generations, it had waited for the one who could wear the helmet, and tonight it would not wait any longer. Liara walked beside Daniel, dressed not for war but for ceremony. Her silver robes shimmered like moonlight. Her voice carried across the silent hall. By ancient law, by blood, and by destiny, the helmet has awakened, it has chosen its bearer tonight. The rightful ruler takes his place. The crowd pressed to the walls. Nobles and soldiers, merchants and children, all watching. Daniel felt his hands grow cold. His heart raced, he wanted to turn and walk away, but the helmet pulsed softly, steady and calm. He placed it on his head, and the chamber filled with light. Symbols flared across the walls, ancient carvings glowing as though they had been waiting centuries. Gasps rose from the people. Liara lifted a crown forged of silver and dark stone. She stepped close, her eyes never leaving his. Her voice softened. You came to us by chance, but chance is only another name for fate. She raised the crown and lowered it onto his head. Her hands lingered, steadying him. Daniel, human of Earth, by the seal of the helmet and the will of this people, I name you ruler of our world. The hall erupted in cheers. Soldiers slammed their weapons against the floor. The people shouted his name until the sound shook the walls. Daniel stood frozen, the weight of the crown heavy, the whispers of the helmet louder than ever. He saw flashes of things, cities burning, armies marching, Liara standing beside him in every vision, not as a servant but as a partner. The coronation feast filled the palace that night. Tables heavy with alien dishes, music loud enough to shake the air. But Daniel hardly tasted the food. He sat at the high table, Liara beside him. Her eyes met his often, and each time he felt the ground shift beneath him. Not only had he won the throne, but he had won her trust, her respect, and perhaps something even deeper. When the feast ended and the people returned to their homes, Daniel found himself walking the quiet halls with Liara. The crown rested on his head, the helmet in his hands. He spoke softly. I never wanted this, you know that. Liara smiled faintly. The greatest rulers are the ones who never asked. They are chosen, as you were. They stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the city. Fires burned in celebration. Stars shone above. Daniel set the helmet down on the stone rail. For the first time since the auction, he felt a little free. Liara moved closer, her voice gentle. You have carried more than battle and crown tonight. You carried hope and you did not break. He turned to her, the weight of exhaustion and victory pressing down. Her eyes glowed in the starlight. He whispered, I couldn't have done it alone. She shook her head. No, but you did not have to, you never will. Her hand touched his, and for a moment the world was quiet. No drums, no whispers, only them, that night. In the privacy of the royal chamber, the bond between them deepened. Liara was no longer just a guide or protector. She became his equal, his companion. The helmet rested silently nearby, as if it too accepted what had happened. For the first time, Daniel did not feel like a wanderer. He felt like he belonged, not only to a throne, but to her as dawn approached. Daniel sat at the window, Liara asleep beside him. The helmet glowed faintly in the dim light, whispering of challenges yet to come, but for this one night he let it rest. He allowed himself peace, knowing that when the sun rose, he would not face the world alone. The sun rose over the alien capital, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. The city was quiet now. The fires of celebration burned out, the people exhausted from nights of cheering. But inside the palace, the silence was heavy with expectation. A new day had come, and with it a new ruler. Daniel stood on the balcony, the helmet resting in his hands. The whispers inside it were calm this morning. Not sharp commands or strange riddles, but steady, like a heartbeat. He looked down at the streets where merchants were opening their shops. Children running between stalls, guards patrolling the gates. For the first time, he did not see strangers. He saw people who looked to him for protection, for guidance, for hope. Liara appeared beside him, dressed in armor light enough for movement but strong enough for war. Her eyes studied him quietly before she spoke. You are thinking of leaving. Daniel exhaled slowly. Part of me still feels like an outsider, a man who bought junk at a market and stumbled into a throne. Liara shook her head, her voice firm. No, you are no longer an outsider. You are the ruler chosen by destiny and chosen by me. The council gathered in the great hall soon after. The nobles who had survived the rebellion stood in silence. Their faces pale, their heads bowed. They dared not speak against him now. Not after seeing the power of the helmet and the loyalty of the people. Daniel walked to the throne, each step echoing across the chamber. He placed the helmet on his head, and the whispers flared into strength. Filling the room with silver light, he spoke in a voice steadier than he expected. I am not of your blood, not of your world, but I carry its symbol. I will not rule as a tyrant, nor as a puppet of your greed. I will rule with fairness, with justice, with strength. If you kneel, we will build a future together. If you resist, you will fall as the rebels did. The hall trembled with his words. The nobles fell to their knees one by one. Soldiers struck the floor with their weapons in salute, and the people waiting outside erupted in cheers when the news reached them. For the first time in centuries, the planet had a ruler not chosen by wealth or fear, but by destiny. Weeks passed and change spread quickly. Daniel ordered food shared with the poor. Schools opened for children of all castes. He walked the streets not as a distant king, but as one of them, listening, learning, helping. The helmet guided him, whispering when danger lurked, showing him visions when choices were hard. But more than the helmet, it was his human mind, practical, clever, unwilling to bend, that earned the people's loyalty. Liara never left his side. She stood with him in council, fought beside him in drills, and walked with him through the gardens at night. Their bond grew stronger with every passing day. The people no longer whispered about prophecy only. They spoke of their king and their princess, of a pair who ruled together, not apart. Yet not all shadows had been cleared. Beyond the stars, other empires watched. Some feared the rise of a human ruler in alien lands. Others plotted to take the helmet for themselves. Daniel knew peace would not last forever. The whispers inside the relic sometimes showed him glimpses of fleets in the distance. Wars yet to come. He accepted it. He was no longer a wanderer running from trouble. He was a king preparing to defend his world one night. Daniel stood on the palace balcony once again. Liara leaned against him, her silver hair brushing his shoulder. He spoke softly. When I bought this helmet, I thought it was junk. I thought I was just wasting credits. She smiled, her voice warm, and instead, you found a throne, a people, and me. He laughed quietly, the sound carrying into the night. Not a bad trade. The helmet glowed faintly nearby. Resting on the stone rail, for once it was silent, almost peaceful. Daniel wrapped his arm around Liara, looking out at the city that was now his. He had not chosen this path, but he had walked it, step by step, and now it was his to keep. The human who once wandered the stars with nothing had become the ruler of a world. The helmet was no longer just a relic. It was a crown, a symbol of destiny. And Liara was no longer just a guide or protector. She was his partner, his equal, the one who shared his bed and his throne. Together they ruled not with fear, but with strength and love, and in the quiet of that night, under stars that belonged to them both, Daniel finally believed what the whispers had been saying all along. He was chosen not by accident, but by fate. The days after Daniel's coronation turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Life on the planet began to change in ways no one had thought possible. Roads were repaired, the poor were fed, and old rivalries between clans started to fade. For the first time in generations, people spoke of hope instead of despair. They spoke of their human king and their princess who ruled together, not from a distance but from among them. Yet peace never lasted long in the galaxy. Rumors began to reach the palace. Traders whispered of fleets gathering in the void, of empires disturbed by the rise of a human ruler on an alien throne. Some feared what Daniel represented, that a man from a faraway world could change destiny simply by being chosen. Others saw opportunity, hoping to claim the helmet for themselves one evening. Daniel stood in the war chamber with Liara. Maps of the stars stretched before them. They are watching us, Liara said softly. They will test us soon, to see if your rule is strength or only shadow. Daniel placed the helmet on the table, its glow washing across the star charts. Then we'll show them, he said, not just with force, but with unity. If they want war, they'll find we are not divided anymore. The council listened as Daniel spoke of alliances, of training new soldiers, of preparing the people not just to defend but to thrive. His human ideas startled them. He suggested shared fleets between rival houses, open markets to cut down on smuggling, schools that trained both warriors and thinkers. At first the nobles resisted, but Liara stood beside him, her voice sharper than theirs, and one by one they bent. But not all enemies came from the stars. In the deep forests of the planet, rebels who had fled the last battle gathered again. Their leaders swore vengeance. Believing Daniel's rule a stain on their bloodline, assassins crept into the city, striking at soldiers and merchants for every step forward. Shadows tried to drag the world back. One night, Daniel returned to his chamber and found Liara waiting by the window. Her eyes were filled with both love and worry. "The galaxy will never stop testing you," she whispered. "You carry a crown that was cursed before it was blessed. The helmet gives power, but it also brings danger." Daniel sat beside her, his hand finding hers. "I know," he said quietly, "but I also know I'm not alone. That makes all the difference." The helmet pulsed gently on the table. Glowing brighter than usual, Daniel reached for it, and vision swept across his mind. Fleets in orbit, wars yet to come, but also children growing strong, fields rich with harvest. Liara at his side through every storm. The whispers spoke again, clearer than ever. "Lead them, protect them, and you will not fall." The next morning, Daniel walked out onto the balcony to address the people. The square below was filled, thousands upon thousands staring up at him. He wore no heavy armor, no jewels, only the helmet glowing softly. His voice carried strong. "I was not born here, but this world has become mine. It is my duty to guard it, not because of prophecy, but because I choose it. Together we will face what comes. Together we will rise," the crowd roared, their voices echoing through the city. Soldiers raised their weapons. Children climbed on shoulders to see him in that moment. Daniel was no longer just a man with a relic. He was their king, their symbol, their proof that fate could come from anywhere. Even a junk auction on a forgotten world that night. Liara stood beside him as the stars stretched across the sky. Her voice was warm but teasing. "You speak like a ruler now." Daniel smiled. "Maybe because I finally believe I am one." She leaned closer, her silver hair brushing his cheek. "Not just a ruler," she whispered. "My ruler." They stood together, looking out at a world no longer broken, a world that now looked to the future. The helmet rested silently nearby, its glow steady, its whispers calm. Daniel knew more storms would come, enemies from within and beyond the stars, but he also knew he was ready. He had a people, he had a partner, he had a throne. The human who once wandered the galaxy with nothing, now ruled a planet with everything. And though destiny had begun with a foolish purchase at a junk auction, it had led him here, to power, to love, to a place where he no longer walked alone.